Welcome to today's Leadership in Action Lunch and Learn webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I would first like to say Happy Founders Day to all of our Phi Sigma Pi members. I hope you take this day to reflect on the mission and ideals of Phi Sigma Pi, remember why you joined this amazing organization, and to remind yourself of the lifelong commitment you took when you went through the induction ceremony. I know our founders would be proud. Today we are teaming up with our national philanthropic partners, HOBY, to discuss logistics and event planning. Many Phi Sigma Pi chapters hold great events, anywhere from ICR events, community events, down to chapter events. They are all important. Here are just two ICR events, for example. On the left, the Beta Psi chapter at Middle Tennessee State University got together with the Beta Phi chapter at Western Kentucky University for a trip to a state park. The picture on the right is from a very popular annual ICR event in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area called Philly Cup. In the picture is the Alpha Epsilon chapter at Westchester University of Pennsylvania at Temple University, home of the Alpha Lambda chapter. Thank you to our members who sent us those pictures. Most of you are probably joining this webinar today because one day soon or down the road you want to plan a great event. Because of that, I want to direct you to an area on the Phi Sigma Pi website where you can find resources on top of resources for event planning. All you have to do is go to phisigmapi.org/resources and click on the event planning resource folder. Today, though, we are joined by two panelists who have a lot of knowledge on event planning and logistics. First, from HOBY is Director of National Programs for Region Y, Rose Santini. Rose has been with HOBY since November 2004. She manages 22 leadership seminar sites, mostly located in the southeast region of the United States. Rose has also co-chaired HOBY's annual training institute for more than 13 years, maintaining the operations area for the event, which welcomes 200 volunteers and staff members each year. Next, we have Director of Alumni Relations and Programming for Phi Sigma Pi, Sarah Smith. Sarah is an alumna of the Epsilon Alpha chapter at Kutztown University of Pennsylvania. She manages the fraternity's alumni engagement, including the National Alumni Association and alumni chapters. She also assists with national event programming and serves as the HOBY Partnership Lead for Phi Sigma Pi. Sarah is a HOBY alum, and this year marks her 10th year as a HOBY volunteer. Currently, Sarah serves on the Board of Trustees for Central Pennsylvania HOBY. Thank you, Rose and Sarah, for joining us today.
Good morning. It's always
a pleasure for me to join you. Can you hear that echo?
Getting an echo. Can you try again, Rose?
Can you hear the echo through the webinar, or no? Is it just me hearing it on my end?
We can hear you, Rose.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's start off talking about why plan large annual events. Why do we? Large events provide opportunities for fellowship with other chapters or people in your organization that you wouldn't ordinarily get the chance to interact with. The event provides a common experience you can use as a gathering point. Large events can be service-based, giving participants an opportunity for organized community service, which is great for team building in your organization as well as community relationships outside of the organization. Events can also focus on learning or academic opportunities. When you hold large events, it fosters awareness within the organization of opportunities for members, and it fosters awareness of the organization from the outside when people notice your event going on. Giving members an opportunity to gather around a large common event fosters enthusiasm and provide networking opportunities inside and outside the organization. Let's look at steps for planning an event. What does that look like, and what do you need to do? We're going to go through these steps in depth later as we go through the webinar, but right now, take a look at the steps for planning an event. Preparation and planning. You need to know which committees you will need and the roles for each committee. Are you going to be incorporating cooperating partners or cooperating organizations? You want to set best practice for meetings. You want to make sure that you are following a timeline and an agenda. You want to have focused operations, want to be efficient, want to make sure that you're doing it the best you can. Record keeping. It's important to know what worked and what didn't. Holding the event. Risk management. There are procedures and policies involved with risk management. Keeping things flowing. It's really important for a smooth, successful event. And then, of course, evaluating the event. This is extremely important, and we'll discuss why later on. Out of the three-phase events, which is the most challenging for you? Which do you feel out of these three phases would be the most challenging? Wow, planning the event. All right, that's great. Well, we're going to go through it, and hopefully, you will feel comfortable by the end. But that's a pretty overwhelming response. Awesome. All right, Sarah.
Great, thanks, Rose. So the first thing we're going to be discussing for the planning phase is to create a planning committee. So if your chapter is planning on hosting a larger event, we highly suggest that you form a temporary committee that can report and work specifically on that event. So when you form a committee, create distinct roles like chair, co-chair, secretary, director of facilities, and director of program. Remember that strong committees should have people with different strengths, like we talked about in the personal leadership and group leadership webinars. You can find recordings of these webinars at youtube.com/Phi Sigma Pi. Utilize the strengths of your chapter members and figure out who would be best suited to serve on the committee. Before assigning roles in the committee, there should be job descriptions for each role, and every member of the committee should have those descriptions so they understand their commitment and responsibilities. In addition to the job description, include the amount of time the role is expected to take on and when it should be busiest, so people can match their personal schedules. So for example, if an event is taking place in May and the planning starts in January, list out the months you expect that role to have the most time commitment. Some roles, like the chair, will be busy all the way through, while other roles, like director of facilities, might be very busy in January and February, a little busy in March and April, and then very busy again in May.
Okay, let's look at planning when you're involving cooperating partnerships. You can easily broaden the resources for your event by teaming up with another organization. For example, if you're going to do a service day that is a park cleanup and you want to plant trees as part of this, you might team up with an environmental organization in the area that has experts in the kind of trees that grow well and might have connections for getting the actual trees planting supply. When you partner with another organization, it creates more networking opportunities, learning opportunities, and public relation opportunities for both organizations. It also allows better sharing of resources like time, knowledge, people, power, and money. And of course, HOBY is always happy to team up with you on any event that you may have. All right, planning successful meetings. Everyone is busy, as Sarah mentioned earlier when talking about the role. So be purposeful about your meetings. Consider the event timeline and how often it requires meetings between that first planning stage and the actual event. Decide based on the scope or scale of the event how many meetings will really be necessary to pull things together and when you'll have them. Make the meeting schedule early on for the entire process so that everyone can plan accordingly in their schedules. For something like the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m., for example. They then know the time and the date, and they can plan ahead. Consider a location that is workable for everyone, which might mean virtual meetings via something like Skype. Be organized about your meetings. The agendas should tie directly back to your timeline and list of tasks. Everyone on the committee should be participating in each meeting by reporting on their assigned tasks. Meetings will be more efficient if they are enjoyable or fun. But they also need to be productive or people will quickly become frustrated. Appoint someone to take really good record minutes of your meetings or notes. We then have something to refer back to during the planning process and the next time we go to plan the event. Sarah?
So Phi Sigma Pi does have a resource for you available. As Danielle mentioned earlier, there's the Phi Sigma Pi Resource Center. So it's phisigmapi.org/resources. And there's a full folder on event planning. In that folder, you can find a sample committee meeting report. So you'll be able to download that, and we recommend using that for all your committee meetings, not just these larger events that your chapter would like to hold. But you can really use this report as a foundation and customize it and make it your own, or you can simply print it out and fill it out during your meetings.
All right, planning. Focused operations. At the beginning of the planning process, determine the intentions of your event. For example, maybe your chapter has a service day of helping with Special Olympics. The intentions might be to provide mentorship to the Special Olympic athletes, to have fellowship among the volunteers, and to create community awareness of your organization. All of the operations should contribute to these three intentions then. For example, when you order t-shirts, you may decide to have your organization name printed largely on the back to help create awareness of your organization. When you think about participant training, maybe you invite a Special Olympics volunteer to come in and talk to your group about inclusive language and best practices for mentoring. This would meet all three intentions at once. As you make decisions during the planning process for all operations, please revisit your goals to make sure your decisions are continuing to match your intentions. Record keeping. It's a great idea to consider annual events because you can learn and improve on them annually. Annual events also foster relationship and fellowship, event awareness, and may save on resources. If you're going to repeat an event, record keeping is key to efficiency. Plan for transitions by keeping good records. It's important to make it so that anyone could step into your role at any given time if needed. Think about keeping the focus on the event and the organization rather than the individual committee members or event planners. If a committee member had to step away from their role for an unexpected reason, good records would allow another member to step in seamlessly, and that's the goal. Those records would also make repeating the event the following year much easier. For example, when you correspond with a facility about rates and reservations, you should put a copy of those emails or notes from phone calls in a folder so that anyone else could see who you talked to and what the history is there or what agreements have been made. This could be helpful if there's a transition at the facility too. So it's not just transitions in your own organization you are planning for. Don't assume someone else will know everything or know something you do. Keep it all in a record. Consider making a Dropbox account or something similar that can be shared in your organization for easy access to these things. Don't wait until the actual event to report on things. Keep records of everything as it happens. This makes it easier for the next person, but also for you.
And record keeping is also vitally important for your chapter's Form 110 report at the end of each term. Committee chairs and officers need to submit reports of events at the end of every semester and quarter, so this is another reason why keeping these accurate reports will be helpful, as Rose says, with transitionings and then for reporting to the national office.
Okay, let's go to a question. Has your chapter ever used the event planning form?
Okay, so it seems like some have, some haven't, but then a lot of you are unsure of what the event planning form is. So great, so that's what this next portion will be about, educating on this resource that the national office provides. So with every event planning process, you want to consider what risks will there be for the event. So the national office has the event planning form, or the EPF. You can find this form directly at phi-sigma-pi.org/planning form. You can also find this form by going to the website, looking at the undergraduate tab, and then the event planning form is linked there. The event planning form is an educational tool to ensure that chapters have the necessary information and tasks accomplished in order to have fun and safe events. This includes making sure that contracts are reviewed and are mutually agreed upon to the chapter's interests. The form also provides assistance and guidance with navigating more complex events. This form should be submitted for events that have any of the following aspects: an agreement, a contract that needs to be signed, evidence of insurance or an additional insured added to a certificate of insurance is needed, animals that will be an element of the event, an athletic activity that involves an element of competition and or timekeeping, and transportation that will be arranged by a third-party vendor, excluding public transportation. The event planning form must be submitted a minimum of 30 days in advance of the event in order to allow the appropriate time for review, necessary event modifications, and processing. If the form is submitted less than 30 days in advance, a representative will follow up with your chapter to discuss the next steps. Please provide all requested information and electronically sign the form at the end. As you complete the form, guidelines and requirements for planning the event will automatically appear throughout. By submitting this form, you agree that your chapter will abide by all guidelines and requirements listed. You will have a receipt of your response via email after the submission. If the chapter fails to adequately complete the event planning form process for an upcoming event, the event may fall outside of the scope of the fraternity's coverage, which will lead to the chapter and our members being held personally reliable. If you have any questions about completing the form, please email the risk management at phi-sigma-pi.org or call the national office. And I highly suggest that you do complete these event planning form for any larger events. As you know, like I said, the contracts will be sent to our fraternity's insurance broker, who will then have them professionally reviewed. When it comes to risk management, you really want to think ahead to limit your liability. The chapter and members in charge of the event have a lot of responsibility to protect our fraternity. During the planning stage, make sure you have reviewed the National Risk Management Policy, which can be found at phi-sigma-pi.org/NRMP. Put procedures in place that prevent risks to begin with, and make it clear that you did what you needed to do in order to limit liability if the risk does occur. During planning, ask yourself the following questions. What physical risks exist? Take advantage of the sample liability forms found in the Resource Center. What reputational risks exist? Does this activity promote and conform to the ideas and values of Phi Sigma Pi? What emotional risks are there? Will this activity increase the feelings of brotherhood between all members in the chapter? Is this event inclusive for everyone? What financial risks are there? Contracts are a major consideration when money is involved. Submit all contracts via the event planning form to be reviewed by the fraternity's insurance broker. What are the facility risks? Make sure that the facilities are adequate for the event and number of attendees and are in a safe environment. Clearly define who can do what at an event, who should be where, responsible, and for what tasks. Having everyone in place doing what they're supposed to do limits a lot of risks on its own. You might not always know what to do if a risk pops up, but you should always know who you could call in that situation. It's important to know that all are involved have been trained so they know what is needed to be taken care of, watched for, and how to handle an emergency or a risk if one occurs. Risk management involves backup plans, knowing what to do in case of bad weather, a shortage of volunteers, or a medical emergency. Have policies in place so everyone knows them. Know that a risk is not the same as an emergency. If something does not immediately come as a problem, but could become one, you need to document it. So for example, if someone falls at an event and they say they feel fine, you should still document it in case their arm hurts the next day. Someone could come to you much later for an account of the event. Always remember to consult experts as needed. The only stupid question is one that's not asked. Contact your chapter consultant, the national office with questions, utilize the event planning form, reach out to your chapter advisor and your student activities office on campus.
Okay, let's go to holding the event and keeping things flowing. So now we're at the event phase. When it comes to the day of the event, know the timeline and make sure everyone has a detailed schedule of events. Assign your volunteers clear roles and tasks that correspond to the times and locations on that schedule. Hold an orientation for event volunteers that include a training on whatever they need to know or do. Empower your people by giving them knowledge. The participants also need an orientation, which would be like a welcome session. Let them know the timeline, where to get things they need, what the facilities include, and who to ask for things they might need during the event. Establish a good relationship with your facility contact because things might come up that you hadn't planned for, or things you had asked for might not be where they were promised. If you need an extra table or the PA system you ordered is not in place, know who to call. Think about what supplies will actually be needed for your event. Bringing more than you need is a waste of time and energy. Think about where the supplies will be stored for easy access, and if some of them need to be packed in a way they can be moved around during the event. Think carefully about where emergency supplies like a first aid kit and medical forms will be kept. Lastly, make sure you have people in place throughout the event to accomplish the goals, tasks, intentions of the event. Create duty stations and assign people to them. An important duty station is wrap up at the end. People might be anxious to leave at the end of the event, so know who is responsible for cleanup, closing out the facility, and so on. And make sure it doesn't get forgotten or left to only one person. You can plan all you want, but if you can't execute, it will be unsuccessful. Let's look at the evaluation phase. Evaluate your event for several reasons. First, you want to learn about what went well and what went better. You might also want to learn about the skills you and your team gained through the planning event. Evaluation helps you know what to do differently in the future should you have this event or a similar event again. During the initial stages of planning, figuring out how you will evaluate your event, otherwise it's likely to be forgotten as things get busier in the planning stages. You might decide to hand out paper surveys and collect them the same day, or create an online survey that you email after the event. Designate someone to be responsible for collecting the results and know in advance when you will meet as a committee to review the evaluation and turn them into action steps for future events. It's important to survey both volunteers and participants to get multiple perspectives. As you review the results, think carefully about what to let go and what to use. Know the difference between feedback that is constructive criticism and feedback that is not really valuable. Complete event evaluation seriously. Collect the feedback, evaluate the whole process, and make notes for improvement.
You can find a sample event evaluation that your planning committee can use to evaluate the event in the Phi Sigma Pi Resource Center. Again, you can use this as a foundation and customize it specifically to your chapter and event, or you can simply print it out and use it on your own. And it's important to save these evaluations so that way, again, you can keep accurate records to be reflected upon later.
Let's look at a question. Out of the 3 phases of events, which do you feel now is the most important? Okay, they all are, right? Correct. So planning the event, absolutely. If you don't execute, you're going to have a problem. So the planning is crucial. Holding the event, you have to make sure that you hold it and you do a great job at holding it so people can count on you to provide a successful event. And evaluating the event, as we said, if you don't evaluate it and you don't know what really worked well or what you could do better, how you could change things, maybe you need to change the facility, maybe you need to add something, it's really important for the evaluation. So while maybe we favor one of the parts or one of the phases, they are all very important to the planning or to holding the event. So thank you.
So when you signed up for this webinar, you were sent an activity. When you signed up for this webinar, you were given an activity to do. So we're going to just go over the activity now. So I'll read the scenario for you. Your chapter has decided to host a dance-a-thon to raise money for the Children's Miracle Network. The event will take place 6 months from now, so you assemble a committee to plan the event. There's a chair of the committee and 5 members who are helping out. You find a place to hold meetings, and each time you want to have a meeting, you let the committee know a few days ahead of time. You're making most of the decisions for the event, and you know you will be at every meeting, so you don't spend time taking minutes and you don't keep many records of your decisions or actions because you are really busy getting everything done. At each meeting, you talk about everything that needs to be done and ask if anyone will help from the committee. Some committee members take on some of the tasks here and there, and you ask them once in a while how things are going. You advertise the event around town with posters that include your organization's logo and contact information. You do not use the Children's Miracle Network logo because you are not officially working with them, even though you have all decided to donate the money for the event to them after it is over. On the day of the event, you have several stations set up, like a registration table, a refreshment station, a DJ booth to play the music, and a photo booth. You also know you will need someone to monitor the dancers and tap people out as they quit dancing. Since you know all the jobs that need to be done, you gather that many volunteers and tell them when to show up. When they arrive, you have a list of duties and ask them to choose what they want to do. You also arrange to have a staff member from the facility on hand in case you need something from them. At the end of the dance-a-thon, the participants have all gone home. You hold a wrap-up meeting at the end of the 14-hour event to ask the volunteers how they think everything went, and then you stay to clean up. So within this activity, we asked you 2 questions. One is, what did the chapter do well? So some of the answers that we received were they had a committee, they delegated tasks to committee members, they had enough volunteers and a staff member there. The chapter and committee did well planning the event in a timely manner. They were prepared for the event, and they cleaned up. Rose, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, they did, all the answers covered it very well. They made, I would like to talk more when we compare what could be improved.
Great, I'll share them now. So what the chapter should improve? Some of your answers were, the chapter should take minutes so people who were not able to show up could still be informed of what had to be done. The chapter could contact Children's Miracle Network so they could work with them and put their logo on the poster. They could have assigned jobs to the volunteers. It seemed as if one person was doing the majority of the work instead of allowing other people to set up and help. I would announce the next committee meeting more than just a few days before you plan to meet. They should host a debrief the next day. They can have a small survey that participants could fill out in order to get their opinions on the event and if they would return to the event in the future.
Perfect. The answers really, when I was looking at this morning, the answers on what the chapter should improve, you nailed it. I was very impressed because some of the things that we talked about in the webinar that's important in the process, you nailed in what should be improved. What the chapter did well, you also got it right there, that they were prepared for the event, that yes, they cleaned up, they had a committee, and they did delegate tasks. However, it was also pointed out that it seemed as if one person was doing the majority of the work instead of allowing other people to set up and help. And that's a really important point, because when people show up to volunteer or help in an event, it needs to feel like it's a team building, that it's a team event, that not one person is alone doing all of the work. Because more than likely, they may put a smile on while they're there, but they're probably not going to show back up. So I appreciated. The next one that I really liked was they should hold a debrief the next day. And while that's true, as we mentioned in the webinar, that you want to evaluate and you want to debrief as close to the event as you can, so that items are fresh in your mind. If you wait a month or two, while sometimes it might be better for schedules, it's really important to know that a quick debrief is the best, so that you can definitely point out what you need to change or what worked really well. And also following up with the facility goes along there, because if it's an annual event and you want to hold the event then next year at the same timeline, and that facility was a knockout success, you want to make sure that you're able to be right in contact with your facility quickly to rebook it, and that way for the annual event you have this great facility rather than stressing out on finding another one. And then they can have a small survey that participants could fill out in order to get their opinions on the event, and if they would return in the future, perfect. Very important, because the survey will tell you, as we talked about in the evaluation process, the survey will tell you a lot. We can always stand back in the background and look at our event and feel very successful, and more than likely 9 times out of 10 we are. We know when we've hit a home run, we can feel it in our gut, so to speak. but getting that feedback and input from the participants and maybe volunteers who weren't intimately involved in the planning process is crucial, because we can learn from them also. Both what the chapter did well for this activity question and what the chapter should improve, excellent. You all are you're on board with it, so very good.
Great. We do have a couple of open-ended questions that we want answered now. So the first one is, what is the best tool or strategy you have found for keeping people accountable and motivated, and why do you think it works so well? So if you just want to answer that on the box on your screen. So one person just answered that they like to give gifts or a prize to somebody to keep them motivated and accountable so that they continue to stay motivated.
Okay. One thing oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We have a couple more. The best tool for The best tool for strategy is delegating tasks and keeping everyone accountable for actions and tasks. Check in often to make sure they are on track. Ask for periodic reports from committee members so you know what is going on, but they also have a reason to progress. Have them report back about the progress of the event planning to the whole chapter. I found that letting chairs or my committee members know I value their input or their work they are doing really helps. I think it works so well because it shows that they aren't doing it just because someone asked them to, that someone is seeing their hard work and appreciating it. Let them know that they are doing it in their goodness of their heart and to improve skills in organizing and helping the event. We ask each member to give a report on their progress. Having incentives have worked well for my chapter, keeping people motivated. It works well because it gives people something to work towards and get excited about. And the best strategy would be to have an open mind. So those are some of the ones that came in.
Awesome. This is why HOBY loves you all. I mean, you definitely hit a lot of home runs in those questions. One of the things that, and it was pointed out in a couple of the answers, but definitely the directors of national programs at HOBY, when we work with a lot of our volunteers in our site, one of the things that we found or find that is a great tool or strategy is just as what you mentioned, is holding them accountable. Having check-in meetings, you know, when you have your meetings, having your committees give a report. And sometimes it's valuable for the chair or for the chairman or the person who's heading up the meeting to get the report in writing also before. That gives you a red flag if you don't have that report that there might be a problem coming up for your meeting. And so it's good to just follow back up then with the person to see if they're, got their report done, and if they don't, when are they going to submit it to you? And then it was also mentioned that appreciation, showing your committee members appreciation. That is so true. You must do that. It's really important to say thank you and to really mean it, though. You don't have to, buy gifts or, do awards necessarily. Those two words, thank you, means a great deal, because most of the time our volunteers are putting out so much time already in many areas. So for them to take on an event with you, it's really important that we let them know they're appreciated. Very good. Excellent.
Perfect. And the next question we have is, what is as a specific cooperating partnership you have found successful, and what did you learn from it? One that just came in is, we worked with the Career Development Center to host a resume interview event for brothers. So that's great. When we became gender inclusive, we connected with the LGBTQ Center to become more informed. We have a couple that say that they haven't found a partnership with another organization yet for an event, but they want to now after watching this webinar, so that's good.
Good.
Epsilon Psi is working with the West Michigan Humane Society to hold a puppy play date where participants can pay to play with the shelter dogs. We've then split the profits with the shelter so we get publicity and help the Humane Society at the same time. And another one is, we work with an organization similar to Habitat for Humanity each semester. We do both service and fundraising events with them. We recently volunteered to clean up after the tornado hit in New Orleans, and the appreciation we got from them and all of New Orleans was great.
Mm.
So that's a couple of examples that we got.
Those are some great ones, and some of the answers that I picked up on is that the appreciation we got from them was great, and that is exactly very important. Is it doesn't matter which cooperating partnership you pick or select, it must work for both groups. So it's important before the event, when you partner with an organization, if you do not know a whole lot about them or your volunteers don't, it's really important to put a fact sheet together. And a lot of this, when I do this, I will gather it off of their website, and I will definitely always reach out to a member and find out some insight that I can share with my volunteers, so that when you get there, you know a lot about, and also you should share with them. It goes both ways about your organization. That way, when you get together, there's already a little bit of that introduction done, and it gives you something to talk about, kind of to break the ice and get to know each other even better by asking follow-up questions. And you can always learn from them. It's important that you do learn and take from what that event with that partnership created for you and share it, so that you can decide how you want to go forward with your future event. Is it that organization? Is it another organization? What do you do? So great answers.
Great, and now we'll leave a couple of minutes for questions. So if you have any, please just answer them on your screen. One just came in. If I am interested in volunteering for a HOBY event or program, who should I contact?
You can contact me, and I will put you in touch with the local volunteers at that site. And we'll help you get a volunteer application completed. Happy to help you. And I do want to, as we're waiting on more to come in, I do want to, make that very clear. We are very interested in having anyone, from PSP who wants to volunteer with HOBY to have that opportunity. Sarah definitely is a wonderful volunteer of ours and can definitely give you, answer some of your questions that you might have for her. But definitely, and for planning events, we love to partner. So we definitely would, our local volunteers would be more than happy, depending again on the time frame. If it's right during their seminar month, that might be kind of tough, but we're happy to help.
Great. Another one is, when trying to plan ICR events, what suggestions do you have to help solve a housing situation?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with your acronyms. Is this an overnight event?
It would be several chapters coming together at a certain location.
Yeah. So probably you're looking at hosting it maybe even at a hotel in one of the meeting rooms. And so what I suggest, what we do, is we go out for what's called a bid process. So depending on what makes sense for, given the area of your chapters that would be attending, pick an area that makes most sense. And we say try not to drive more than 2 to 3 hours. And then everybody's very conscious about a budget, and so you want to make sure that we offer double rooming, and so that we get the bid from the hotel based on their room, and we really negotiate with them and ask for them to comp their meeting room. And I can promise you, if you're bringing in enough hotel rooms, they will allow you. Now, what you have to be careful there, of course, is the food and beverage. You might need to plan smart there, maybe leave to go off-site for pizza or subs, because sometimes in those cases in a hotel, they'll require you to buy their food if you're going to eat during your event, and that can be very, very costly. So I would definitely get a bid process first to see what fits in your budget, and then again, it's planning on a proper timeline to advertise it and have a deadline of at least 3 weeks before the event for everything to be back to you.
Okay, the next one is, annual events are super fun and give a chapter something to look forward to. What is the best way to make an event an annual event?
The best way is for us, when we think of, like, say, a yearly clue, which is your community leadership workshops that we'll do, again, it's all about the area, the facility, and then inviting, the people. And that, first of all, that first one, your first year, we say 3 years. I know that may sound like a long time, but we say 3 years. The first year for your event is a learning process. You're really, did the facility work? Did we have the proper panelists? Did we have the proper speakers? Did it flow well? And so forth. Was the area proper for our attendees? The second year, you are, again, did that timeline work? Did you have it in the fall? Was fall best? Do you need to move it to the spring? So your second year is playing with the feedback you got. Did it work? If it did, then hold it again that same time of year, but go by your evaluation results and your feedback to make it even better. And then your third year, you got it. You have fine-tuned it, and you've got the success with the area, the facility, the speakers, and so forth, or at least topics. And then we say, you can hold it again in the same place the fourth year, but really we try to change out every 5 or so years. Now, for some of our seminar sites that have a great university and a great partnership, if it doesn't make sense to move your event or move your facility, don't do it. Again, it's what's best for you and for, your attendees. It may not be best always for us volunteers. But again, it's about the attendees and the event itself. So I just say planning, and don't, that first year, take it as a learning experience. Don't get discouraged. Just make it better for the second year. But the timeline is what's really proper, and is it the right time to hold the event? But stick with it. It takes a couple years, at least 3. Don't give up.
I definitely agree, and I think it's also important that when you are holding an annual event, and it's something that your chapter's been doing every year, and you're stepping into this new role, to make sure you look back at the event evaluations and making sure the event is still relevant and still fulfilling a need, and that it's going well. Because you can have a good event and keep it very stagnant. So it's important to constantly be evaluating the effectiveness of that event, and what it's portraying and doing for the members of the chapter. So you can really take a good event that's been going on and make it a great event just by continuing to evaluate and looking for new opportunities.
Great, and we have one last question for Sarah. Is it good practice to fill out the event planning form for all of our big events?
I definitely would encourage getting into the practice of filling it out. So it's one of those, if you're not quite sure if you should or not, I would go through and fill it out. One of the great things of the form is that it's intuitive, so based on the answers that you give, different informational boxes will pop up. So some of them will say, you're good to go, you do not have to continue to fill out this form, while others will give you more information and areas to go to reference, so whether that be the National Risk Management Policy or the Constitution, operating policies. So it's a really great form and resource that I would just start getting into the habit of doing. It can answer a lot of questions for you and provide a lot of great feedback, maybe some things you didn't think about. So I would add it to your officer and chair information, and making sure that gets transitioned and that people know about the form. Because again, it's a valuable resource that, if you submit a contract, it could be, reviewed by a professional in the insurance, and they review contracts for a living. So they're really able to look at the details and, give great feedback, and making sure the chapter and members are protected, and that if anything does go wrong, that the chapter or individual members are not going to be held responsible or liable. So it's really making sure that you're also protecting your chapter and yourselves when you're planning these larger events. Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rose and Sarah, for discussing logistics and event planning with us today. You'll be able to watch and share this webinar on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Phi Sigma Phi. The next Lunch and Learn webinar will be on Tuesday, March 14th at noon Eastern. That is when we will talk about being an effective leader. You can register at phi-sigma-pi.org/LIA Lunch and Learn. Thank you again for participating today, and congratulations on earning 8 Leadership in Action points. Remember, your goal is to reach 75 points to earn your Leadership in Action certification. You can earn points by participating in local, regional, and national modules or monthly tweet meets in the Lunch and Learn webinars. The next tweet meet will be taking place on Wednesday, March 1st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. The topic is officer transitions. You can register at phi-sigma-pi.org/tweetmeet. That does it for today's Leadership in Action Lunch and Learn webinar. Happy Founders Day. Lead on.